Hello, North Penn community. Bob Gilmer, Coordinator of Communications Media here. I'm here with Dr. Todd Bauer, Superintendent of the North Penn School District, and Mr. Steve Skrocki, who is our Chief Financial Officer for the North Penn School District. And we're here today to talk to you about renovations at North Penn High School. If you haven't heard yet that we're renovating North Penn High School, guess what? We're going to be renovating North Penn High School, and there's a lot of decisions to be made by our community coming up in the next couple weeks, and particularly on January 16th, 2024, where we're going to have a vote on the future of North Penn High School. So, Dr. Bauer.
Yes, sir.
Welcome. Glad to have
Bob.
you back again. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
So we just wanted to kind of give an overview again. We're going to start from the top of where we've been, where we're going. We're going to go through the options here a little bit and what a yes and no vote means in a referendum. So if you can just talk about the beginning of this. How long have we been talking about the North Penn High School renovation?
Yeah, so I will say my history here in North Penn, Bob, is I was hired in 2015 to be the high school principal. And when I was the new principal here, as we were transitioning from Mr. Hines to myself, he said to me, they're going to renovate this place as soon as I'm out of here. And lo and behold, the conversations began. But a decision was made right around then to move forward with NAP first. It was the last elementary to be renovated. So we moved forward with NAP, and then we started talking about renovating North Penn High School. And as the conversation started to unfold back then, this is 2016-ish, I'm going to say, we were starting to unpack it. It was really, look, if we're going to do this to a 550,000 square foot building, is there anything else that we want to do? And I remember the moment, Steve, you probably do too. You were in the room and we talked about, is now the time to move ninth grade? And all of a sudden, I think a lot of pencils dropped and pens dropped, and everybody's like, if you're really going to do a project this large, is it time to do it right? What else would we want? So at that time, Bob, we started talking to folks. We had community forums in 2017. I think there were 2 back then. And we talked about all the options that were out there, whether or not ninth grade could move. What are we going to do with middle schools? What are we going to do with Crawford Stadium? All these conversations were happening way back then. We progressed forward. We met with students, Dr. Dietrich, the other assistant superintendent at the time. It was me, Dr. Rufo, and then Dr. Dietrich was the superintendent. We went to the building, we met with kids, we met with staff members, we went to the middle schools, had community conversations and forums, and got lots and lots of feedback. And then everything took a pause. We had the pandemic, and obviously educating our kids and keeping everyone safe became the priority. And once we kind of put that behind us, these conversations really started to heat up again. So here we are, and we did some financial projections. If we moved ninth grade up, what would that look like? Can we afford it? And ultimately, the decision was made that we would need to go to referendum if we want to move ninth grade to the high school.
So if I can pause there for a second and just go a little bit on the history, and Steve will put you on the spot. I know you weren't here for the last 30 years at North Penn School District, but I think there's a point here that you brought up, and we talked about renovating. The discussions here is North Penn has been in a continual renovation cycle my entire career since I got here. I started here when we built Walton Farm and Bridle Path, and then we started renovating all of the schools. If we could just take a moment to talk about that cycle of renovating, and we've incurred debt along the way with all these projects. So every building except for North Penn High School proper, original, and the 3 newest elementary schools, 91, 94, Bridle Path, Gwinnett Square, and Walton Farm, every building has been touched and there is debt associated to it. So I don't want to go deep dive into all our debt, but incurring debt for renovation projects has been part of almost every budget conversation every year since I've been here. If we can talk about what schools do with renovations and debt and what that means to a school district and budget.
Absolutely. So I'll try to equate debt to like a home mortgage, Bob, because schools finance construction typically with what's called debt or debt service. They do that by floating bonds. So people can actually buy the bond. Some of our community members might want to purchase a North Penn School District bond for construction. So homeowners incur a mortgage to finance the purchase of the home. School districts use bond issues to finance construction projects. Very, very common in Pennsylvania. Most school districts don't have 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 million, or in this case, $403 million just sitting around waiting for a construction project. So school districts float bond issues to finance that, and they pay it back over a period of time, just like a mortgage is paid back over a period of time. Now, for the high school project, we're looking at borrowing money with 25-year bonds, and incurring debt that way to finance the construction for the high school project.
When we think about all those projects we've had, the most recent construction project was Knapp Elementary School. How many schools are we still paying for?
Wow, so I've been here at North Penn 10 years. Let me rattle off the major projects
Sure.
that we've done in the 10 years. So when I got here, Inglewood was wrapping up, and then we moved on to Hatfield Elementary School, and we had Crawford Stadium, we had Knapp Elementary School. Montgomery, right, forgot about Montgomery. So it's been a cycle, like you mentioned, like once every other year, it seems like we're involved in a construction project. We're still paying for Hatfield, Montgomery, Knapp. Crawford is fully paid for. That was actually used with some of our capital reserves. We did not incur any debt for Crawford Stadium. So we're still paying off 3 buildings. So it's very common for school districts to borrow money for between 20 and 30 years. Again, very similar to a home mortgage to pay back. That's typically viewed as the life cycle of a building, 20 to 30 years, because the theory has it, you pay off the debt, and guess what? You're ready to do another renovation or another building project after the debt is expired.
I appreciate that. And that's why I just wanted to bring that up, because it has been a cycle of constant renovation here in the North Penn School District. So the elementary schools have been touched. The middle schools, sans air conditioning, were renovated in the early 2000s. Yeah. And these are discussions we talk about, what we're doing here at North Penn High School. And we'll get to it a little bit more of why and what we're doing with Referendum and why that's taking place in that manner. So we've talked to lots of people. We've been out in the community. I feel like that's all we've been talking about in the last year. But there are still people out there that don't know much about it. They may have heard, like, yeah, I think they're just thinking about doing something at the high school. If you can give me a top-level view of what is the referendum from a standpoint of what's it mean when I vote yes on the referendum, and what's it mean when I vote no? So what's what we have been calling option 1, which would be a yes vote, and what is option 2? So just give me a high-level look at that.
Yeah, and we are transitioning away from those 2 terms, option 1 and 2, just to keep it very succinct for January 16th. And it is yes or no. And in a yes vote, that is the biggest thing is yes, I agree that the school district can borrow $97 million for the purposes of renovating and adding to the current facility for bringing 9th graders to the high school. And with that, there are a lot of things, and it's not as cut and dry as this building or that field, right? There will be a lot of cohabitating within that building and on the campus. So from athletic fields to classroom spaces to cafeteria to spaces for clubs and activities, it's really hard to say this is for 9th grade, this is for 11th grade, this is for 10th. But really, to oversimplify it, yes means we agree that we should bring 9th grade to the high school. We understand the cost of that. And then all the other things that we want to do to accommodate 9th graders to come to the campus. A no vote means no, we want 9th grade to remain in the 3 middle schools, and we are not going to make major changes to the 1971 building itself.
Since the inception in 1955 of North Penn High School, it's been 10 through 12. So this community for a long time has known the high school to be 10 through 12. Is that normal? And what do we see in the county and what do we see nationally? What does high school look like for most schools in the country?
So high school, without a doubt, by definition, is grades 9 through 12. It is grades 9 through 12. We tell our 9th graders in the middle school, you're in high school now, even though they are not physically in, because it's on their transcript. It is what goes to colleges, the course offerings. High school is 9th grade through 12th grade. As of right now, today, North Penn is the only school district in Montgomery County that does not have 9th grade at their high school campus. There are some districts that have a separate building, like a 9th grade center, but everyone has 9th through 12th on the same campus. We're the only ones that do not. Even in a neighboring county, Bucks County, right? People often talk Bucks and Montgomery. There's one school district who does not have 9th grade at their high school campus, and that is changing next year. So effective next year, we will be the only school district in Bucks and Montgomery County that don't have our 9th graders having access to all of those opportunities throughout the course of a regular school day.
Well, I want to talk about those opportunities. Why is that so important that 9th grade is here at the building?
Yeah, so you did ask about nationally, and Bob, 98% of high schools and school districts across the country have 9th grade in their high school. A lot of school districts are way smaller than North Penn, and have, say, 7 to 12 in the same building or 5 to 12 in the same building. It is very unusual.
There are no current plans to add 5th grade to North Penn High School.
You are correct.
I just want to make sure we don't start a rumor there. We're talking 9 through 12
9
for North
to 12,
Penn. Okay,
like
good.
every other high school. All right, so the reason for having 9th grade on the high school campus is quite simple. It's to afford all the 9th graders the same opportunities that 10th through 12th graders have. When you have 9th grade spread across 3 different facilities, that means your teachers are spread across, your instructional materials, your athletic and club materials, everything is spread across 3 buildings, which causes you to lose efficiencies, right? So if you put everybody together, obviously we're bringing our resources together, we can offer more opportunities for kids. We have lots of clubs, activities, and sports that occur here at the high school. Kids just don't have the chance to take when they're in 9th grade. They can when they're 10 to 12. Yes, some of our 9th graders come up to the high school on a daily basis for academics. It's roughly 130 kids, which is 13% of them anyway. That does not include the kids who come up to this campus for clubs and activities. So 13% of them are coming here to take, whether it's advanced courses, whether it's to go to North Monco Technical Career Center, all kinds of opportunities. They come here anyway, but we also surveyed all the kids a few years ago, and 78% of them, I believe, said that they would have if they had the opportunity. If they were here, but they don't want to get on a bus, start their day earlier than the rest of their middle school peers, and have a longer school day, and be in a high school without their friends. So obviously, our kids are missing out. They're point blank, and we can go in, and we don't have enough time now.
Yeah.
Well, which courses and all those things, but North Penn students miss out because our resources are spread across 3 buildings as opposed to being in 1, let alone all the things that are happening 10 to 12.
So I want to wrap Steve in here and talk about this point, but why don't we just build a second high school? We want 9th grade here. We're worried about the numbers. Let's just build a second high school, and that way we can split it up and put 9 through 12 here and 9 through 12 in another place. So let's talk about, I'm going to throw this to Steve because it really comes down to numbers and space, right? Why don't we just go, why isn't one of the options build a brand new second high school?
So we actually consider that as an option, something we wanted to study as part of our analysis. And the cost to build, construct a new high school, second high school, was far in excess of the numbers we're going to share, the $403 million estimate for the yes vote. Mm-hmm. So it was really cost prohibitive for us, and we moved on from that option pretty quickly because we realized there was just no possible way the second high school could be financed and funded by our taxpayers in the community.
And what's the other piece of that, right? Let's say we could. Let's say it was affordable. We found the space. What else do we have to do yet?
We still need to renovate this building that has not been touched since 1971. Right? People think, build a second high school. Okay, but this building still needs to be renovated. That is the no vote. That's option 2. So inaction is not an option. And we still need to address our middle schools, right? And like Steve was saying earlier on, we have 21 facilities in the North Penn School District. We are on a constant cycle. So if you start a renovation every 2 years, you're talking about buildings not being touched for 40 years. You wouldn't leave your home untouched for 40 years. Sure. So it is a constant cycle, and we have to continue to renovate. And for future borrowings and future renovations and facility needs, it is cost prohibitive. It's not possible to build a second high school at this point.
Let's jump into the costs then. The option 1, yes vote, is for reimagining North Penn High School. That's what we've been talking about. And we have some concepts, schematic concepts out there so that we can create a budget. Let's talk about what the yes vote concept looks like and how we manage 4,000 students in 9th grade here at the high school.
Yeah, so one thing that people don't realize, and when you go for a tour, and I cannot recommend that enough, we want everyone to come and have a tour who is able and willing to come. We want them to go behind the scenes, go in the utility closet, see what is going on here, because we keep a clean facility, but the facility is tired. So, the building was built in 1971 for 2,400 kids. 2,400. We currently have about 3,000 here, right? And back in the 90s, a decision was made not to build a second high school, and that property was sold. And so K-Pod, which is all the way in the front of the building, was added in addition to Carroll Natatorium. But what didn't happen was the arteries and the hallways of the building, they were not widened, right? So we didn't increase the capacity of the 1971 building to handle 3,000 kids. So hallways are overcrowded, right? Large group spaces are underutilized because we just can't use them the way we want to because we have a lot of students here. So the yes vote, Bob, is not only moving ninth graders and creating new spaces and 2023 and beyond learning spaces, but it's right-sizing the building for not just 3,000 kids, but 4,000. Access to other areas of the building, wayfinding, and campus flow will totally be reimagined and revitalized because it just doesn't meet our needs today. And you said to me, and I've said this publicly many times, why would our building right now does not meet our needs? Why would we make that 1971 building new again to the 1971 standards? And that's really what a no vote is. We will correct all the systems, new floors, new paints, new HVAC, new plumbing, all those things, but it won't right-size things for just the 3,000 kids because of future spending and other projects.
Gotcha. So this is the first time North Penn is doing a referendum. Referendum is relatively new in the last 20 years, less than 20 years, where once Act 1 was put into place, referendums became part of the conversation for school districts in the state. So this will be the first referendum for North Penn. And I just want to talk about, so we talked about the yes vote, option 1, reimagining North Penn High School is $403 million. I don't like to say in change because it's still a lot of change after the $403 million, right? But we're going out to referendum for approximately $97 million. That's the yes vote to incur debt to include ninth grade and all of the renovations required here at North Penn High School. That's the referendum. We'll put the question up here. Why is it only $97 million?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bob, and a question that's been asked many, many times. So I think we need to be very clear, once again, that the total project cost is about $403 million. It's also important to emphasize that is now an engineering estimate. I think when we met last time in the spring, we were dealing with square foot estimates. And we mentioned that those estimates would change. The estimates then were about $400 million. Now we're at $403 million with more concrete estimates and more concrete schematic design. So again, $403 million for the entire project. So we have the ability to work with an outside firm, a financial advisor firm, PFM in this case. And what they did for us is they studied our budget profile, they studied what the Act 1 index is, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. And they looked at what the possible debt profile would look like in borrowing $403 million. And really the essence of the question is, could the school district fit $403 million in debt within its budget, within the Act 1 index? And the Act 1 index is basically an inflationary index that caps a school board's ability to raise taxes in any one year. So for example, in the current year that we're in now, the Act 1 index was 4.1%. That means that the school board cannot raise taxes any more than 4.1%. But you can imagine that borrowing $403 million would put quite a bit of pressure on a school district budget and still stay within the Act 1 index. So what we did, the study was how much money could be absorbed by the general fund budget without exceeding the Act 1 index. So we had an answer to that. And the remaining amount was roughly $100 million that would need to come outside of the Act 1 index, meaning that the board could raise taxes above the Act 1 index to finance the additional amount of money needed for the project. And that it came out to roughly the $97 million that we're talking about to bring the ninth graders to the high school. So to be very clear again, the total project cost, $403 million. Why the $97 million for the referendum? That's the amount of money that's needed to exceed the Act 1 index to be able to pay for the project. We felt it would be irresponsible to ask the community to have an Act 1 exception, if you will, for the full $403 million. What that would mean is that the school district could raise taxes and that $403 million would be all above the Act 1 index. The more responsible way of handling the finances is just the portion that is needed, in essence, to bring the ninth graders to the high school. The $97 million, that's the piece that's needed to exceed the Act 1 index.
The question I hear a lot too is, so we have $403 million, and then you have a $97 million referendum to exceed Act 1 index. Why then is the no vote option 2 only 236?
Right.
It's not 403. Why isn't it 403 minus 97 and say, well, why don't we reimagine 10 through 12 in option 2 and just do that? So why is there a disparity between those two numbers?
I want to be abundantly clear on this issue as well. Why is 403 minus 97 not the cost of option 2? And Bob, it honestly goes back to the future spending, right? Because if ninth grade does not move to the high school, we believe we are going to have to spend the entirety of that difference on the 3 middle schools. If we decide to move ninth grade to the high school, we will absolutely have more options for what we do at the 3 middle schools. Maybe it would be 2 middle schools, right? We don't know that yet. And we can't make decisions in 2023 that will come into play, let's say, in 2030, when there are different employees, different school boards, different, right? And I don't want to put a timeline specifically on each project.
Sure.
We need to make this decision, and this decision will really determine which direction we go with our middle schools. So that's why there's the numbers just don't quite add up. 403 minus 97 is not 236. That difference, that buffer in there, is really for future projects because we won't have the same spending capacity. If we do the reimagine part to the 10 to 12, then we'll be limited on what we could do at the middle schools.
One of the things, the way I've looked at it too, is between that is that those funds in between are going to need to be spent either at 3 middle schools, and that's not reimagining those things either. That's just making things work, putting air conditioning in. It's where we invest that difference. So
Yes.
the investment, will it be here at a reimagined 9 through 12 high school, or will we be investing those same funds in keeping North Penn High School 1971, keeping Penndale Middle School 1932, 1955 with air conditioning, and same thing with Pembroke and Penfield with mods.
Yeah.
Right? So it's this is what we've got going on right now, and that difference, it's where we invest that difference is going to be. And without the referendum, we're not going to be able to reimagine anything in any of those areas.
Yeah, Steve always says when we're in budget conversations, the money is the money is the money, right? And we have 21 facilities, and the cost to renovate them is estimated at a certain amount of money, and it's just a simple math equation. It is not affordable to do all of this all at once for ninth grade and bringing ninth grade to the campus and reimagining what we want to do now, right? So the money will be spent in the long run, and it might be spent at Penndale, it might be spent at Pembroke, Penfield, the air conditioning, reimagining some of those buildings. But the referendum will allow us to incur that debt sooner in order to do what we want to do here at North Penn High School. And I never really answered the question, Bob, like, how did we get here with that 403? And we went on visits. We went to visit high schools up and down the East Coast at this point. We saw other renderings. We've gone through images. We brought committees together to see what do we, the administrators, the school board, the community, the teachers, the students, what do we like? What do we want to see? If you were able to decide what you want your high school to look like, what components would you want to see? And that was all part of the design process. We've had hundreds of people involved in this design process since 2017. This is not something that started yesterday. Mm-hmm. This is not something that started last year. It was well underway back before the pandemic. In 2017-18 was when these conversations really picked up.
Well, in that process too, and I've heard this as well, like, why only these two? Why is it these two? Well, eventually we have to make a decision on what we're doing, right? But along the way, Steve, you talked about it, we considered, is it even possible? Is it financially possible to build a second high school and renovate and look at all those pieces? And I know I've heard, like, well, let's see those plans. Like, we don't make plans for things we discuss, right? We're brainstorming, we're thinking about, we look at what we're doing. And I know, we've kind of looked at all the different iterations that it could be. And ultimately, I think I know the answer to this. Why settle on yes, no? We're here, yes, no, black, white, this or that.
So when people ask, let's see that design, let's see that plan, what would that have looked like? We agreed with the architect, I believe in May, June, to schematically design the actual. It is November right now, and we're still not quite done. Mm-hmm. Right? It takes 6 months of teams of people to do the magnitude of what we're talking about right now. We can't just simply spend months and months and months and months drawing up all these different designs. We would never go anywhere. It's urgent, Bob. The video that hopefully we're going to pull from the archives is from 1996, where we had board members saying, this has to be done now.
You will see very clearly that there are built-in bottlenecks to this plan relative to trafficking. We need to do something about getting from A pod to H pod. what I'm saying here to sum it up is that I'm asking for us to consider in any plan we do the fact that this current high school is 25 years old and needs work,
It's 2023, it hasn't been done. This is urgent, the building needs it. So eventually we decided on a direction, and the direction was 9th grade moving or not. And we have to make that decision. If we move 9th grade, and if we make this building all that we want through this design process that I said involved hundreds of people, how much would that cost? And if we don't do that, how much would that cost? That's where we are right now.
Talk to me about this summer. We had a design workshop with students and community and parents and staff. What were some of the themes before? We had our concept, but we never had the schematic concept down yet, and that's what we were working on. That themes you heard from parents and students, like what they needed to see in a reimagined North Penn High School. What wasn't working here, and what could we do better if we had the opportunity to reimagine?
I assume in this conversation we'll get to the instructional components, because instruction has changed since 1971 to today in 2023, almost 2024. But a lot of it was about the campus itself, navigating the campus, where certain things are and its convenience and ADA accessibility, but also navigating the building itself, how it's difficult to get from one way to the other. How can we connect things and make things accessible, not just to the students and the staff during the school day, but to the community? North Penn High School is a community center, and it's so how can we access certain parts of the building in the evenings? Why is our cafeteria all the way in the back of the building when our gym, our auditorium, our natatorium, our facilities that are accessed by the community, essentially 24/7 at this point at this facility, why is the cafeteria all the way in the back, right? They should be together so we can utilize the food services for all those other events. Those types of things, like certain things just don't make sense with 2023-24 that they did in 1971.
So when we talk about our learning spaces, STEM, which is science, technology, engineering
and math.
Oh, I was stuck on engineering.
A lot of
math,
STEAM, you could throw the A in there.
Which is the arts. So we add those pieces in there and we look at how we reimagine the core of this building. How does that change our learning spaces? What are classrooms going to look like, and what is the goal with that? We got to see Upper Marion on a tour back in the spring. A lot of folks joined us personally and watched online and still can watch it on the website. When we see what new construction looks like, tell me about some of those elements about what next generation learning looks like. And I continue to say this, next generation is today, right now, are the things we need to see in the classroom for students to help them achieve and what makes this a more collaborative building.
Yeah, so I continue to say that learning in 2023 is dramatically different than 1971. And just kind of like a microcosm story here of why it's so different is memorizing facts, dates, no longer necessary, right? Because all that information is at your fingertips. You can just look it up, right? So it's more about synthesizing, creating, problem solving, and collaboration than in 1971, where we were sitting in rows, receiving information from our instructor, and regurgitating it back. Because that information was not at our fingertips 24/7. We couldn't take out our phone and ask Siri or Alexa, right? So the types of things, and the learner today, and then eventually the professional and the individual who contributes to society, the skill sets are so different. So inside of a classroom, is there still going to be lecture style at times? Of course. But the actual learning is participatory. It's actually getting out there and doing something. It's going out, the learning spills out into the hallway. It's interclass, meaning my class and your class. We're coming together and solving a bigger problem than just how do you solve this equation? How do you read this text? It's collaborative, it is problem solving and critical thinking skills. So it's very different today. You go to the modern high school and it's not sitting in rows in an assembly line of instruction. It's more hands-on, more robotics, more creation than it was back then.
When we talk about these collaboration spaces, and it opens, a big part of that is opening up the spaces visually, how it feels, sunlight, all of those types of things coming into the learning spaces. And we open that up so we can collaborate more. A lot of people worry about security. I think you said it before, bells and cells was the methodologies in the 50s and 60s in design where like get in your room, stay in your room, stay behind that door, bell rings, you can leave. Sometimes it's tough for those of us that are older to like, Well, what's that mean if kids get to come out into this collaboration space and work, and the teacher's not directly with them? What happens? What happens with security? Talk to me about how that's managed in a modern high school when we have these collaborative open spaces that's right next to a classroom. How's a teacher manage that?
Right.
What's it look like? And how do we keep kids safe in that scenario?
And this is a very valid point, Bob, and comes up in every conversation when you're talking about renovating a building or building a new structure. And it has really evolved into security via transparency, right? Like it is, when you have these large spaces, we can see what's going on. You can isolate certain areas of the building. If there's a fire in a certain part of a building, we are able to isolate that part. And it's also about egress. Right? We have this vision in our head that school security is all about duck and hide in a corner. That's not it. The number one option is to evacuate if possible, right? So opportunities for children, staff, and students to leave if they can. So it's really about visitor management, campus flow, the opportunity to close spaces, badge management, right? I mean, in a building that you have 3,000, potentially 4,000 kids, is it all about which key is on my key ring? Can I get that key ring in an emergency at the right time? Or is it really about your badge? And what spaces do you have access to? Or can we shut down with the touch of a button certain parts of the building? So there really is enhanced security measures in a new building as opposed to a building built in the 70s where honestly they didn't worry about the things that we have to worry about in 2023, sadly.
Gotcha. So I just want to transition a little bit into the referendum and impact. So ultimately, a yes vote will mean $97 million in debt incurred that can be above Act 1 index. What's that mean for the average homeowner, Steve, when we're talking about what's this going to cost? For $403 million, that's a lot of money. What are we talking about to the impact on the average homeowner?
So this is a big question, right? Everyone wants to know, how is it going to impact my finances, my personal finances? So let's start with a little crosswalk between how homes are taxed and what the impact would be. So homes are taxed right now based on what's called an assessed value. And here in North Penn School District, the average assessed value is about $150,000. Now, that doesn't mean that's what your home is worth, because the last time Montgomery County conducted a countywide reassessment was in 1998. So the farther away from 1998 you are, the more the disconnect there is between the assessed value and the fair market value of your home. But the state comes in and saves the day because they have this formula that you can actually apply. It's called a common level ratio that's issued each year. And for this year, that common level ratio is 0.36. So what that means is if you take your assessed value, divide it by 0.36, that will give roughly what the implied market value of your property is. So here in North Penn School District, that average home might be assessed at $150,000, but it's probably worth somewhere around $423,000, okay, because home prices have grown, particularly in the last couple of years, quite rapidly. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that average home for the time being. And also it's important to keep in mind, we said that there's no third consideration here. We talked about a yes vote, option 1. We talked about a no vote, option 2. You didn't hear us say anything about option 3, doing nothing. Yep. That is not an option whatsoever. So what we like to focus on is, tell me what the difference is. So when you're deciding whether to cast a yes vote or a no vote, the essence, I feel, is what is the cost difference between the two options? What is the additional cost if I vote yes for a referendum? So let's focus on that. And it's also important to know that when we borrow the money with the bond issues that we talked about before, we're probably going to borrow the bonds in 7 different increments.
And that's a good point. So when we talk about 403, it's not like 2025, 2026, a $403 million loan taken out on year 1.
Not at all, not at all, because we want to borrow the money when we need the money. We don't want to borrow the money too soon. In fact, we're actually prohibited by borrowing the money too soon. There's IRS regulations that we're certainly not going to get into here. Yeah. But we're anticipating 7 different bond issues that would total the $403 million. And we're anticipating the bond issues to be 25-year issues. So until the final bond is paid off, it'll be 32 years from the beginning until the end. So we looked at that difference between the yes vote and the no vote. The average annual increase to finance this project would be $171 for that average homeowner.
Per year,
average. That's based on the current estimates. Now, interest rates could go down, which means that $171 could be less. Interest rates could go up. It could mean that the $171 could be more. We can't predict interest rates because if we could, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation, right? But right now, we just had these estimates updated recently. So they do reflect current interest rate environment, plus a little hedge in case rates go a little bit higher, but it would be $171 for this project. Another important point, that is just for this project. That doesn't mean that there might not be any other tax increase as part of the regular budgetary process that the board decides on each year. But isolating this project, if you vote yes for this project, that would mean if you have an average home of $150,000 in assessment, it would cost about $171 on average each year for 32 years.
And to be clear, when we talk about that, and we have this chart on the website as well, so you can go there and look that up, the assessed value is what you need to look at. So I'm an average homeowner. I'm right there in the middle column. Zillow, I get my little Zillow updates every day, and it says my house goes up by this much, a house goes down this much. My assessed value has not changed since 1998.
Correct.
That's been, since I bought my home in 1998, that's been my assessed value of my home.
25 years.
It's same. So when I look at that, to be clear, of assessed versus market value. So I know when I hear people say like, oh, who has a $150,000 house? There's a lot bigger houses in this community. Where is that at? That's the assessed value, and we have on the website there what that implied market value is there. Is that we're talking about $171 on average. Some years it might be a little less or a lot less or a little bit more, but average over that time, it's $171 a year because we're reimagining North Penn High School and we said yes on the referendum.
Correct.
That's outside of any annual tax increases that may be needed for other reasons, just the high school loan, $171.
Yes, another thing, Bob, a question that gets asked quite often is, well, if we vote yes and the referendum passes, when will I see an impact on my taxes? So we're not anticipating borrowing any money probably for another year, sometime in the fall of 2024. The impact, though, won't be felt until the 25-26 fiscal year. So our fiscal year starts July 1. So if the referendum vote passes, individuals will see an impact starting the July 1st, 2025 tax bill.
And if that moves forward, I know at Finance Committee meetings, we will have updates on that and where we're at.
Every meeting, Bob.
Every meeting.
So when we talk about the impact, financially to the homeowner, so when I look at this and I'm a parent in the school district and I have a 7th grader, I'm like, oh great, this doesn't impact me. My kids will never see this. And we talk about the impact as we go along. When will students start to see the impact of what this renovation is?
If we're forecasting all the way to the end, I believe we are saying that based upon estimated timelines, things can change, but the current 2nd graders will enter 9th grade and with no construction whatsoever. The project will be complete.
The first class that 9 through 12 fully is here in the building.
That's correct. However, that does not mean that, for example, the current 7th grader will not feel the impact in a positive way. Some parents and community members, I think, are thinking, great, my child's going to be in a construction zone. It will be a construction zone. However, the first piece of construction is going to be the addition, if yes passes, right? And passes means one more vote than no. It's a simple majority. Okay, so the first thing that will happen is the additions, the brand new spaces, so that we can use those spaces as swing space, Bob. So that we can close other areas of the 1971 building, the 1999 building as well, but we will close certain portions of the building so that they can be renovated and we would utilize the brand new part. So current middle schoolers would absolutely reap the benefits of those new spaces. But the final, totally done, fields, outside, inside, campus traffic, all of that, it's estimated that the current 2nd graders would enter 9th grade with the project completely finished. If
it's a no vote, we're still renovating. And so students will be living through a renovation as well, and there's some other pieces to that. So if it's no, and we have to fix the plumbing, we have to fix the HVAC, we have to fix the electrical here. The building will be under renovation. Where's those swing spaces when we're doing the no vote?
That would actually be modular construction, Bob. So similar to other projects we've done, when we have to close areas of the building, if you're not doing an addition, in option 2, there is no addition other than a couple small additions for ADA compliance reasons. We would have to bring in modular construction, temporary modular construction, at the cost of $15 million throughout the course of the project. And it would be more disruptive, right? Because the modular construction is not going to be as large as the addition. So that means our students who are learning in spaces will be closer to the construction. So it will be more disruptive with option 2.
The students that we have right now, and we've talked about these rolling renovations we've had over the last 25 years, our buildings every other year, elementary schools have been renovated. So we certainly have kids now who have lived through renovations. It's not something new. It's something we have managed throughout all these years as we've been renovating buildings. Some of the things I wanted to use the time for too is to dispel some misconceptions or rumors. What are some of the big ones you've been hearing that you'd like to correct or help people to understand or get more information on? What's like the number one thing you hear is like, well, that's not what's happening. What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, I think the real important thing here, Bob, is the difference between option 1, yes, and option 2, no. And it's really what will happen if it passes. And it is a total change to the campus. Athletic fields move, driveway access changes, parking changes, transportation does move off the property in a yes or a no, but everything changes in option 1. And as we previously explained, there aren't those options if it fails, if it's a no, because we won't have the borrowing capacity for future projects. So all these changes, some of the athletic fields that, for example, baseball and softball, in a yes, they move over to the WMPV property. There's new access to the campus off of Sumney Town Pike. There are a lot of things that are proposed right now, and there are many steps in between now and then that just won't happen. And then you go inside the building, which of course is the most important part. And what you see today will still exist. It will look newer, but it will be the same. The learning spaces will not change. The hallways will not change and be right-sized for now 3,000 kids as opposed to 2,400, as we explained. The cafeteria will remain in the back of the building. So none of that flexibility that we're looking to provide for our students and our community to make it modern, not to mention the next 50 years, that won't exist because we just don't believe a project of this magnitude, this building is currently 550,000 square feet. We can't do all those things without passing this referendum.
And Steve, what about you? I mean, I'm going to keep hitting you on the finances. I've heard some people throw some numbers out there about like what that means for my taxes. My taxes are going to triple over the next 8 years, those kinds of things. What are you hearing and what's accurate?
Yeah, a couple of things. I've heard that the project cost is $1 billion. I've heard some comments about that. Then it declined to $800 million. So again, I want to make it very, very clear. It's a $403 million project. Obviously, you pay interest as part of that over time. Even with the interest, it does not equal $800 million. It does not equal $1 billion. Sure. So dispel that right from the get-go. And also, we did receive feedback recently that homeowners are confused what the impact will be specifically for this project. So I don't think we can state too often that it's $171 per year if you have a $150,000 assessment in North Penn School District for this project, $171. So I think we need to be very, very clear about that. I just heard the other day someone, I think was at the polls and said, well, I heard my taxes are going to go up by $4,000 or $5,000 in just a couple of years. That is simply not accurate. $171 for this project.
And it is not increasing $171 each year. That's not what you're saying.
Right.
You're saying the difference between yes and no, on average, is $171 a year.
Yes.
And I really think it's, Bob, the last thing I really just want to emphasize is how important the decision is. Mm-hmm. The decision was made not to build a second high school 30 years ago. And I am completely respectful of that decision. And I'm sure they made it for all the right reasons in that moment. But that charted a course for the school district to today.
And that, what I hear today, when I hear about that, it's like, man, we should have done that. Why didn't we do that? The retrospective look back, we should have done it then. Then in 95, 96, it wasn't necessarily clear that the second high school was definitely the better option. Looking back, I think you hear people say, like, we should have had a second high school. And I feel like, to your point, this is the we should have moment, and that's the decision the community makes, because this is the decision we will live with for the next 30 years, just like we did on not building a second high school.
Yeah, it is fair to say that North Penn High School will not be renovated again in our lifetime, in an adult's lifetime.
It took 50 years to talk about renovating it from once it was built in 71.
Right.
So if we use that same metric and if we apply the same processes throughout all those years, we're talking between 30 to 50 years before this building would be touched again.
That's correct. So it really is a moment, as you said, and hindsight is 2020. So we're making a decision now, not for just us, but for our children and our children's children. And do we want 9th grade on our high school campus? Just like every other school district in Bucks and Montgomery County and 98% of the school districts across the country. That's the decision that's being made, and we're recognizing that that comes with a financial responsibility. So we want to be as transparent as possible in explaining that and letting the community know this is how much it's going to cost. There are no secrets. We want to answer every question that everyone has, and we keep hearing from folks, the tour made a difference. We want to emphasize the fact that if you want a tour, there are options on the website, reimaginenphs.org. You can sign up for a tour. You can request a tour. I'll make it even simpler. Send me an email. We will schedule you a tour. We want everyone to have the opportunity to have their questions answered and to see what we're talking about live and in person.
So before we wrap up, and we'll do our final pitches, and the pitch is be involved, learn, and vote. Let's talk about the vote. So January 16th, 2024 is the special election for this referendum. It is one question.
It is.
It is the
Let's
question.
put that on the screen again,
right
Bob.
now.
Put it on the screen.
We see it sitting there for the purposes of adding 9th grade to North Penn High School and all the renovations required, the debt that's needed to do that. So the yes vote is reimagining North Penn High School. The no vote is keep everything the way it is and fix what's broken here. They are the two options. The functional part of that, Steve, Todd, what do we need to do to vote in that election as a member of the North Penn community?
So this is an easy question to answer because we just had Election Day. You do exactly the same thing. If you requested a mail-in ballot, you'll get a mail-in ballot because you have to request that once a year. You will get a mail-in ballot if you requested one. If you went to Penndale to vote, guess what, Bob? On January 16th, you go to Penndale. Now, the location of where you vote in that facility could change, but we will communicate that. We will provide information on that because we are having school that day. When we set our school calendar, we did not know that this would be happening a year ago on January 16th of all days, right? So we're going to put systems and structures in place to ensure safety. We have had election days where we had school before. There are ways to provide security and in and out access to the building, closing off areas where the community does not have access to students. But we will have school that day. So you will go to your same polling location, and if you did a mail-in, you can do a mail-in on this. We want everyone to vote. We want everyone to be an informed voter.
It is a special election, but it's an election.
It is.
Just like any primary or regular election, the difference here is it's on January 16th, 2024, at your local polling place that you go to, and it's going to be one question. So we're wrapping up. Appreciate all the information. Hopefully this has been informative for folks. We want to make sure you're getting all the information from our reimaginenorthpennhighschool.org website, emailing Dr. Bauer directly.
Fine.
Frankly, any of us that you see talking about the high school renovation, and we continue to ask, let us know what we're missing. What is it that you need to know that would help you make a better decision? So my final question to you is, what's the ask for the community? We're wrapping this show up. One thing you want them to do, what is it?
It would really be to just simply be an informed voter. And if we can help that process, please reach out. If you have a club that meets on a Tuesday evening and you have a bunch of folks sitting around that have a bunch of questions, reach out. We will come to your club. We will come to this community and give a presentation at your weekly bingo night. We will come wherever and whenever to answer all of your questions. We've been in the community. We've hosted our own events, of course, but we will even take our show on the road and come to you. I want you to have all your questions answered, and I want them to be fact-based as opposed to people just kind of speculating or I heard or rumors. Ask the question. This is that important that you deserve to have every single question answered and every opportunity to come and see the facility itself. So my last ask for the community is to take that extra step to be informed. Reach out. Put it on us to help you be informed.
All righty. Dr. Bauer, Mr. Skrocki, appreciate your time this morning. Hopefully all of this was helpful for everybody else. Ask the questions. Go to the website. Please vote on January 16th, 2024. As Dr. Bauer said, it's a generational decision here. And the best part about it is each of us here who live in the North Penn community, we're making that decision. We will decide what the future of North Penn High School looks like on January 16th, 2024. That's it for now. I'm Bob Gilmore, Coordinator of Communications Media. Thanks for watching.